WSAL 551, monitoring Valley 625, stations out there. Fantastic reminder. I forgot TechNet is tonight, correct?
Yes, it is, in about 3 minutes.
Thank you. We'll be monitoring. Thank you again, WSAL.
Well, good evening, friends, and welcome to the AZGMRS 1900 TechNet on this 23rd day of April, 2024. This is Frank, WRVG 584, and I'm your net control for the evening. The AZGMRS 1900 TechNet is a directed net where we discuss matters relating to GMRS and various other topics. While a directed net is in operation, all radio traffic must go through net control. And as a reminder, the first and third Tuesday of each month will be the 1900 net, as we've always conducted it, with the normal pre-registration and check-in process. On the second and fourth Tuesday of each month, we have the 1900 TechNet. There will be no pre-registration or check-in process for the TechNets, so don't worry about getting taken off the roll if you don't speak up tonight. And on months like this, with a fifth Tuesday, there will be no 1900 net, so next Tuesday, no net. Just as a reminder, if you should have any emergency or priority traffic during the net, you are always free to break in at any time. Does anyone have any emergency or priority traffic before we get started? Okay, before we get started this evening, I'd like to ask WQZ645 if he has any announcements for us. Gary?
Well, thank you, Frank. This is WQZ645. And I just wanted to remind everybody about a couple things coming up here. Now, this Saturday on the 27th, we've got the emergency radio operator class. And that, of course, is part of our emergency communications course. And still time to sign up for that. Just go to our calendar there on the website, azgmrs.org, and you can get more information on that. Then in May, on May 18th, Saturday, we've got our member get-together there at 11 a.m. at Barrel's Pizza. And we had a lot of people this last time here on our Barrel's Pizza get-together there. Quite a lot of people there. Great turnout. And then coming up on June 1st, also a Saturday, we've got our Arizona GMRS Connection Fest coming up, so don't forget about that. This is WQZ 645. I'm going to turn it back to Nat.
Gary, thanks. Yeah, we did have a great turnout on Saturday. It was great to see a lot of familiar faces and many new ones. So once again, good evening and welcome to the 1900 TechNet. In just a moment, I'm going to open it up for any tech questions or discussion regarding GMRS or two-way radio. Please respond one at a time with your call sign or call sign suffix. Once I've acknowledged you, please state your question and we'll ask other stations for answers and comments. All traffic, again, must go through net control, and after each question has been answered, the original caller must clear with their full FCC call sign. I also just want to remind everybody to don't forget to take the pause. What does this mean? We want to wait at least 10 seconds when we turn on a frequency to make sure there's not already traffic going on or someone using the repeater. We want to pause at least a second after pressing the PTT button before speaking, so then you don't cut off your first or couple first words in your transmission. We call that quick keying. And wait 2 seconds before responding back to someone during a radio conversation. This allows all of our links to catch up appropriately. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Who wants to be our first victim? Any radio questions? Go ahead.
519. RZH 521, Shane in Goodyear. I have a question. Is there a good antenna? I know there's dual band antennas for 2 meters, 70 centimeters. Is there a good brand that would also work well with GMRS?
Hey, Shane, stand by. Actually, Jeff 519 snuck in there right before you, so stand by just a minute. WPTT 519, go ahead.
Yeah, I realize there's a Mesa repeater that's linked over here, or over to you guys on 55. I was at Falcon Airport and went to key it up, whatever. There was no hang time or any response. So I'm wondering, one, does it not have a hang time, or is it down, or do you know the status of it? WPTT 519.
Okay, so Jeff's question was about, do we have a squelch tail on the Mesa repeater? And I don't think we do, but Gary or somebody else, does somebody know definitively?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think there is one on that one. WQZ 645.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought too. I know we don't have one on 550 for various reasons, and I assumed it was the same way on the links. As far as I know, Jeff, it is up and running. I was talking to somebody yesterday on it, but anybody else have any other comments? If I've been able to get into it or not, just depending upon where I'm at in Mesa.
All right, thank you much. WPTT 519.
347 with comment.
347, go ahead.
I pick up perfectly fine out here at Higley, Maine in East Mesa.
Okay, are you on it right now?
Negative, I can switch over in 30 seconds. I'm on HT.
Okay, yeah, if you want to. Why don't you chime back in here in a moment? I'm going to take Shane's question about an antenna. Shane, can you repeat your question and your call sign?
Yes, WRZH 521. My question was, so in my rental I'm allowed to have one antenna, and I want to get into ham as well. I know that the antennas, you have the 2 meter, 70 centimeter UHF. Is there a good brand antenna that would be good with GMRS as well, with the good SWR? Just wondering if anybody has any experience with that.
well, I have an opinion on that, but we'll open it up to the net first. Anybody have a comment about a good 2 meter, 70 centimeter GMRS antenna? Go ahead.
WRPY 760.
Go ahead, Bubba.
Hey, my recommendation would be the Comet 2x4. I have one on my vehicle and one on my house, and I'm talking on it right now. And they're very good antennas. And with that, I'll give it back to you. WRPY 760.
Okay, that's a great antenna. That's the antenna that I run on my Bronco for off-roading. And I have no issues with VHF, UHF, and GMRS. So I would second that one. Anybody else with any other antenna ideas for Shane 521?
802.
Hey, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, Shane, I am running a 2x4 as my base station antenna. That's what I'm talking to you on now, and I also run one on my vehicle. I find that when I...
if you want to go ahead and throw your call sign out there.
WS. Tossing it back to you, Frank. There you go.
WSAK 802, thanks for that. So, got a couple votes here for the 2x4 from Comet. I would certainly recommend that as well. Anybody else have any other antennas?
363 with a comment.
Hey, Steve, go ahead.
Just to clarify, I didn't quite catch the entire question. Was he asking about a mobile or a base station antenna?
He was asking about a base station antenna. Yeah, that was his question initially.
All right, well then, those are great mobile antennas that work great for base stations. We all know that, but they're also base station antennas, which will take care of your ground plane as well. It has some great ones of those too. You know, the CP6, I don't remember all the CP series, and also the EFC series. Depending on how big you want to go, you can go from 3 feet all the way up to, I think, 18, 17 feet or something like that. But anyway. Just thought I'd throw that out there. WRCS 363, back to net control.
Thanks for that, Steve. Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's what's so nice about the 2x4. You can use it for a base station or a mobile antennas, as long as you have a ground plane at home, a cookie sheet with a mag mount, or gun safe, or put it out on your grill or something like that outside. Anybody else with any other antennas? And I'm going to throw another one out there that I use on my vehicle that could also be used at home. Go ahead.
257.
Hey, Bill, how you doing? Go ahead.
WRMR 257. Hello, Frank. I haven't talked to you in a few days. I don't use it, but I've heard it, and I think it was about a 5.5, 6 footer, and it worked pretty well. So there's a couple of base antennas, but you are getting up around $100 for either one of those two. But there's a couple thoughts for him anyways. WRMR 257. Back to you, Frank.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the X50. Those are great antennas as well. You can find all those at HRO, and there's a couple different ones. I'm not sure which do the best all the way across the spectrum. I know Gary has mentioned the X50 before. There's also the X30, and I think there's another one in there too, but I'm not sure about all the differences between them. But those are absolutely all great ideas. Shane 521, does that answer your question?
Yeah, Frank, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for your response. Additional question, I'm running the RG58 for my GMRS. Is there a particular coax that would also support the VHF, UHF? Thanks again. WRZH 521.
Well, RG58X or RG58 will work all the way across the spectrum, so no issues there. The only thing about that particular coax is it's a little lossy. I particularly run RG8X, which is a little bit more of a low-loss coax cable. But, yeah, if you're concerned about will it work or not on VHF and ham 70 centimeter, you won't have any problem. You don't need to buy any other coax cable.
802, comment.
802, go ahead.
KMR 400 or LMR 400. I'm currently running a 50-foot string of KMR 400, and I have some of the best readings I've ever had. Just my personal favorite at this point. No thanks to 363. WSAK 802. Back to you, Frank.
Yeah, LMR 200 is going to be definitely about the best you can get for coax. Very low loss. But a little more expensive. Kind of the same with RG8X. That would probably be in the middle of all three of the options we've talked about. But anybody else with any comments about coax cable? It's definitely a good topic, and we don't really talk about it much. Any other opinions? Go ahead.
WRPY 760.
760, go ahead.
Yeah, Frank, I run LMR 400 on everything, and I've never had a problem, and I'm usually pretty good getting out there and getting in, so it all works out very well. WRPY 760, back to net control.
Hey, Bubba. Yeah, thanks for that, and yeah, LMR 400 is definitely good cable. So you got a couple options there, Shane. What do you think? Does that kind of answer your question about that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, everybody, once again. Definitely have a lot. I was actually taking notes here. Thank you, and that answers my questions. WRZH 521, back to net.
Yeah, those are great questions to start us out. I know a lot of people, when they first get into ham or GMRS, definitely want to know about antennas, radios, and coax. So thanks for starting us out with that. All right, let's move on. Any other questions we want to throw out to the net? Go ahead.
WRPY 760.
760, go ahead.
Hey, just for a thought, when I first started, I had a Comet 2x4 on a pizza pan with a mag mount in on my kitchen sink in the house, and it worked perfect. And the only reason, and you can use a square pan. I just did a round pan because it's omnidirectional. Probably means nothing, but just in case. WRPY 760, back to net control.
A pizza pan, that's a good idea, Bubba. Yeah, we obviously hear a lot about cookie sheets, but not much about a pizza pan, but that's a great idea. Yeah, running a mobile antenna inside in there, I heard a Joe, standby Joe. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, WRCS 363. I was just going to throw in one last comment about the coax cable. Regardless of which one you go with, try to avoid piecing them together. If you don't, if it's not long enough to make the run, don't piece 2 or 3 together. Also, try to avoid using connectors. Use as little amount of connectors as possible. Ideally, you want to go straight from your radio to the antenna with nothing else, no other junctions in between. Thought I'd throw that out there. WRCS 363.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. You're exactly right. Anytime you have connectors or more cable than you need, you're going to have some loss. And by loss, power loss. So you might be putting out 30 watts from your radio, but if you're running through, over 100 feet of coax with a bunch of connectors, you're not going to be putting that much out actually into your antenna. So great point. Okay, we had a Joe out there. Can I get your call sign?
Yeah, this is WRUJ 649. This is Joe.
Oh, I know that, Joe. Hey, how you doing tonight? Go ahead, Joe.
Good. I'll make this quick. I'll probably have to have some help in person, but I had a situation this weekend. Seven Springs. I was up there trying to call Kelly here in Phoenix, or anybody for that matter, and I cannot get any kind of signals, anything. What am I doing wrong, or should that be taken up one-on-one with somebody? WRUJ 649.
Okay, Joe, before we put that one out there, what kind of radio were you using, and where were you at again?
Seven Springs, up there north of Bartlett Lake, and I'm using Wooksum, Ocean.
Okay, so you're on an Ocean handheld, probably putting out about 5 watts, and you're up by the Bartlett Lake area. And what repeaters were you trying to get into?
I was trying everything. I couldn't get anybody to even say they heard me. I don't know what I was doing wrong. You know, maybe I know it's me, but I'm just curious what I'm doing wrong.
Okay, well, I have a sneaky suspicion that you were in a dead zone for repeaters, and that you were possibly not making it into anything because of just where you were, and that you were on an HT, not putting out a whole lot of power. Does anybody else have any opinions or any experience with that part of the valley? Go ahead.
348.
Heard an 8. That was all I got. Again, please.
348.
Okay, got 348. Go ahead.
This WROE 348. That area of Bartlett Lake is it is really a dead zone, because even there are some areas around that Bartlett Lake where you can't get cell phone coverage as well. Over.
Roger that. Makes sense. I know I've been up there. It's been a while, but I never really tried to get into GMRS, but wasn't able to get any cell service, so that was my suspicion as well. 348, go ahead and throw out your full call sign for us.
This is WROE 348. Got another question for the net. Over.
Please again.
RBK 11.
I heard you that time, Clark. Go ahead.
Been out bass fishing on Bartlett, and it's pretty much a dead zone for any of the repeaters. I've tried several times to get through. Occasionally, if I'm out in the middle of the lake, I'll get into the Scottsdale one, but other than that, it's pretty much dead.
Okay, roger that. I figured that was the case, and glad you're out there tonight. I'll let you go ahead and throw out your call sign, Clark.
Absolutely. WRVK 11, back to the net.
Thank you, Clark. Joe, does that answer your question? I think you were just in a bad spot.
It does, but this is my concern. No cell signal, I understood that. But what is the idea of having my radio if I can't get a hold of anybody? That was my concern. I got to be able to get a hold of somebody. WRUJ 649 out.
Well, sometimes you're just in a spot like that, and I have that problem all the time off-roading. If I'm down low and between hills, I don't have anything either. But as soon as I get up a little higher and out of a valley or a canyon, then I start to get some coverage. So Bartlett Lake, depending upon, where you're at, if you're at the lake or near it, you're going to be down pretty low. My suspicion is the higher up you go from the lake, the better you're going to be able to get into possibly some repeaters. So, Joe, I would just say try to find some higher ground next time out there and try it again.
Yeah, this is Joe. I climbed the highest darn mountain I could find, and I still didn't get nothing. But, all right, thanks for all the help, guys. WRUJ 649 out.
257 comment.
I think that was Bill, 257. Go ahead.
Yeah, 257 here. One thing, guys, remember with the HTs, you're 5 watts, and especially if you're just using, whether it's the rubber ducky or you got a 15-inch antenna on it, it's an HT. And if you've got terrain around you, buildings, low spots, whatever, they're not going to do good at all. And you're going to find dead spots within the valley and even out in the sticks that you're not going to hit a repeater. But with an HT, it's really going to get tough. So, I mean, 5 watts versus a 40 or 50 watt radio is a huge difference, not only in power, but also the bigger radios have a better receiver. So don't fool yourself that an HT is gonna communicate 30, 40 miles away all the time. About the only time that's going to happen is if you're up high, or if you're completely out in the open where you got a clear shot at the repeater. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. WRMR 257. Back to you, Frank.
That's a great point, Bill, and I'll also add to that, when you're running a mobile, you're also running a bigger antenna that probably has some gain, unless you're running like a quarter wave or a unity gain antenna. But at least on my Bronco, I'm running a high gain antenna that, coupled with the power that I'm putting out with a mobile, certainly has much, much better transmit and receive abilities than an HT. So great points. Joe, if you're still listening out there, might be time for a mobile.
All right, gotcha, everybody. Thanks. WRUJ 649. I'm out. Back to the net.
All right, thanks, Joe and to Bill for that response. I think we're going to put that one to bed and move on to 348, who had a question. 348, go ahead with your question.
This is WROE 348. My question is, with the Crown King repeater being the 575 being unavailable to us, is there any other repeater that would give that kind of coverage, or an alternate that would handle the central and west part of Phoenix? Over. This is WROE. Back to net.
Hey, before we get a pile up, I know that there's some folks with opinions out there about that, and we're going to let 348 hear them. Who's got an opinion about what kind of coverage is similar to the 575 out there that would be accessible? Go ahead.
363 with a comment.
I think that was Steve. Go ahead.
You're right, Steve, WRCS 363. I can tell you that Tower 600 actually shares an antenna with 575 and gets very similar coverage. Has a local side and a link side. So, yep, WRCS 363.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Tower 600, I was going to say that's, excuse me, definitely a good option. And it's pretty much at the same location as 575. Any other open repeaters around the Phoenix area that would cover Phoenix and the West Valley? Any other suggestions out there? Go ahead. You got a key up but no call sign again.
Four 469.
469, go ahead.
Yeah, this is WRVR 469. I was also going to mention the Shaw Butte 725 is also a good one for the Valley. Has a local and a link. And to the person at Bartlett Lake, I would think the Towers repeater would probably, I would think it would cover that area, so I'm not sure. WRV 469, back to the net.
Thanks for that, 469. Yeah, Shaw Butte's also another good local repeater that covers the West Valley and Phoenix fairly well. Any other repeaters out there that people use around Phoenix with good coverage? Go ahead. Well, those are the main two. Tower 600, like Steve mentioned, has great coverage. I've been able to get into it all the way past Casa Grande. Once you get past South Mountain a ways and get out of the shadow, you're able to get back into that repeater to the south of South Mountain. I'm in Surprise. I have no problem hitting Tower 600 with a 5-watt handheld, almost full quieting. It's up at about, I believe, something near 7,000 or 8,000 feet, so it's up very high. It shoots over all the hills, south of it and south of South Mountain once you get past it. Shaw Butte, also a great repeater. It's located in central Phoenix, up on a mountain there in the middle of the city, and it has great coverage pretty much all over the valley as well. So 348, does that answer your question?
This is WROE 348. Yes, it does. I really appreciate the input. I didn't realize the Tower 600 was online, so I will start using that as doing some radio work there. Thank you. This is WROE 348. Back to net.
348. Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking it. Yeah, those are phenomenal repeaters that are open and don't require club membership, and really do have great coverage. Those are, well, Tower 600 is definitely one that I use quite often when I'm off-roading up north, and pretty much anywhere in the Northwest Valley, Peoria, up by Table Mesa, excuse me, Wickenburg area has good coverage all around there. Thanks for the question. We'll continue on here. It's about 7:30, and this is WRVG 584, Net Control. Any other questions tonight for the TechNet? Go ahead.
347.
WRZ X-ray 336.
Okay, we had two stations in there. I heard 347 first, and then we'll go to 336. 347, your full call sign, please.
WRWP 347. I am on a Ocean 905G on a 625 handheld. How do you copy?
Well, I'll tell you what, from where I'm at, you're pretty much full quieting into the repeater. You couldn't really improve your signal at all. You sound great.
Copy, and also for the Bartlett gentleman, if he goes up to Humboldt Mountain where the fire lookout is, he can hit the 600 and the 625 from there. I used to work up the lookout up there. Perfect view, you can almost look right into Scottsdale. WRWP 347, listening back to the net.
Thanks for that, WRWP 347. Appreciate it. Thanks for that. Yeah, I would try Tower 602 out there too. That would be my my go-to if I was trying to get into something out there. 336. You had a question. Go ahead. I think it's WRZX 336.
Yes, WRX 336. It seems like sometimes I only pick up one side of the transmission when people are talking, like this gentleman that was before me. I didn't even hear him come on. I just heard you talking to him. Why is that?
Well, I'll go ahead and answer that one. So on Tuesdays, we have actually two different tones. We have the 550 tone, which is what you're listening to as a club member. And then the repeater also is open to folks with the travel tone. And if your radio is not in monitor mode, you will only hear traffic on 550 alpha. So what I do in my radio on Tuesdays is I set up a separate channel called 550 monitor, and I remove the receive tone. So you're hearing everything on 550, including the folks that are joining us on the travel tone. So that's what I do on Tuesdays, and I highly recommend that everybody do that, so then you hear everything on the repeater, not just 550 alpha.
Thank you very much for the information. WRZ X-ray 336, clear?
Yeah, no problem, Paul. That's a great question, and I was actually talking with one of our newer members last night about that. We were trying to program his radio, and I advised him to put a channel into his channel bank that he would use on Tuesdays, and I named mine in my radio 550 MON. And again, same transmit tone that I normally use for 550, but I just removed the receive tone. So you're running what we call carrier squelch, which means no receive tone. And that allows you to hear folks, again, that are on 550 Tango and 550 Alpha. And that's really only relevant on Tuesdays. So great question. Thanks for asking it. Any other questions for the TechNet tonight? This is WRVG 584.
WD 623.
I think that was WRWD 623. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is WRWD623. I just have a question about interference. Lately, if my radio is anywhere near my laptop and my laptop is open, my radio gets all sorts of static and stuff. Is that normal, or is there something that I can do to alleviate that?
Well, that's a really good question. What kind of radio are you using? Is it an HT or a mobile, or are you also seeing this on GMRS or ham as well?
I'm not entirely sure on what the radio is called, but it's on ham radio and on GMRS radio.
Well, I know exactly what radio you're using, and I was just trying to add some more context to this for everybody else. But this is something that Luke has been experiencing with his HT. If it's near his computer monitor, I've seen this myself, it will have noise come through the radio, some static. If he moves it within about, 4, 5, 6 feet away, it goes away. Anybody have any experience with that? Does that happen to you as well? And what could be causing that? Go ahead.
WRPY 760.
760, go ahead.
Hey, Frank, what are you talking about? Static in the monitor or static in the radio?
This is actually noise that's coming through the radio speaker when it is in close proximity to his laptop computer monitor.
Wow, that is a good question. WRPY 760. Back to you, Frank.
802, comment.
802, go ahead.
I have discovered that if I'm on my radios and I'm transmitting, even with my handies, if I get them anywhere near my 36-inch screens, my screens will completely go different colors. I've also found that it switches off my LEDs on and off on my porch. What I have found is if I move that away from it 6, 8 inches, most of that will go away. WSAK 802. Back to you, Frank.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that does happen to me as well. I've got actually one of those lacrosse weather stations in the house with the display, and if I'm anywhere near it with my HT, it'll blank that screen out, it'll reset it, does all kinds of crazy stuff. The issue Luke's having is just when he's listening, it's not even transmitting. So the radio's on, it's listening to 550, and if he puts it right next to his computer, it's almost like the computer is sending a signal through the radio speaker, and he's getting static. So it's not when he's transmitting, it's just when he's listening on the radio. I'm not sure if anybody out there knows the answer to that, but if anybody wants to take a crack at it, go ahead.
914 comment.
Heard of 44. Go ahead, your full call sign.
I believe it was 914.
Okay, Abel, is that you? Go ahead.
Yeah, WREW914. I have that same problem when I have my mobile at work. I usually like to listen to Shaw Butte, but I notice if I power off my PC, the actual PC itself, I'm not sure if it's the processor or the hard drive that's transmitting a signal. You just have to move away from the computer.
Roger that. Okay. So he's not the only one that's experiencing this. And honestly, I've got my HT. I'm on a mobile or on a base right now, but I've got my HT right next to my laptop now. I've got an Anytone 878, and I don't have that issue. So I don't know if it's only certain radios or what. But anyway, thanks for that, Abel. I'll let you go ahead and throw out your full call sign.
Yeah, thanks for taking the net, Frank. This is WREW 914.
Comment.
Thanks, Abel. Bubba, you got a comment?
Yeah, the only thing I can think of there, Frank, is maybe his laptop is trying to connect Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, maybe you might want to go in there and turn them off and see if that helps, because sometimes these computers will put out a signal to looking for a place to lock onto, kind of like our cell phones, and maybe that might be it. I don't know, but WRPY 760, back to net control.
257 comment.
Yeah, thanks, Bubba. Appreciate it. Bill, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm assuming this a little bit. I'm no electronic whiz, but I think all electronic devices to some extent put off some sort of RF. Some may put off more than others, and you find that out sometimes with LED lights and stuff. And it's going to be just something you're going to have to move away from. But, you know, you go into buildings with a lot of fluorescent lights and stuff, and they create all kinds of interference, and you just got electronics kind of fighting with each other, and you just got to work around it, you know. That's my assumption anyways, for what it's worth. WRMR 257, back to you, Frank.
827 comment.
Okay, Bill, yeah, appreciate that. Mike, go ahead.
Well, I've had the same issue at my desk, and I attribute it to the LED making noise. Now, I am attributing it to just the lack on my laptop. It's just the lack of shielding because the screen is so thin. Because my LED larger monitors do not do it. So I'm attributing to just the minimal shielding that you have in a laptop screen anymore. WQIP 827.
That makes sense, Mike. It definitely seems like it's the monitor that is causing it. So I know there's all these little radios and stuff in these computers now for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and it could be that, but it definitely seems like, at least when I've seen it happen, it's the monitor. So I appreciate that, Mike. Yeah, the solution we've just been doing is just don't have the radio near the screen, and then it goes away. So, I mean, you can even put it on the other side of the coffee table, and it's fine. So, Mike, I appreciate it. Thanks for being out there. WRWD 623, Luke, does that kind of give you some insight into this?
Yeah, this is WRWD 623. Thanks, everybody, for the answers. I mean, long story short, when I'm on the MacBook, I just can't be on the radio right next to each other at the same time. But, yeah, back to the net. Thanks again.
Luke, I'll let you throw your call sign out there one more time.
WRWD 623.
It's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. I kind of forgot about that was going on this week. So thanks for throwing that out there, and thanks, everybody, for the responses. Okay, it's 7:42. We got about 18 minutes before Gary's going to take over, and we got time for a couple more questions here. This is WRVG 584, net control for the GMRS 1900 TechNet. Any other questions? Go ahead now with your call sign.
363 with a comment.
363. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, this is WRCS 363. I know we put this one to rest, but there has been a few other comments about the Seven Springs area, and I believe that's what he was referring to as Seven Springs and not necessarily like Bartlett Lake. I'm very familiar with that route. The entire drive up through Cave Creek to get to it, you're going up in elevation. And then once you hit that Seven Springs area, you actually go down into like a canyon, and you're in this windy canyon for, you know, a few miles. There's nothing in there. It's dead. I mean, I've got a high power with a nice antenna. I can get signal all the way up to Seven Springs, but not through it. And then once you continue on the service road up north through Seven Springs, it actually, the signal comes back. So, but in that Seven Springs area is just a dead canyon. WRCS 363.
Yeah, Stephen, when you say get your signal back, I'm assuming you mean Steve, and just solve that problem for everybody. Thanks for chiming in. It's good to hear you out there tonight. Any other questions or comments tonight for the TechNet? It's just about 7:45. WRVG 584.
649. This is Joe.
Hey, Joe, go ahead with your call sign.
Yeah, WRUJ 649. Yeah, he is correct. Seven Springs. I don't know the area well. It's the first time I've ever been there. But he is absolutely right. It is way down, then way up, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I just want to let him know I appreciate the input. Thank you. WRUJ649 out.
Thanks, Joe. I'm glad you're still out there, and say hi to Kelly. Appreciate it. Any other questions or comments tonight for the TechNet? Go ahead.
.238 comment.
Well, hello. Go ahead.
Hey, Frank. Thanks for taking the net. Concerning the computers with the radios interfering or coming through the speaker, there's a guy up in New River, and he's got a YouTube channel called Tech Prepper, and he's got a special computer that doesn't interfere with anything. His name's Gaston, but he's got a YouTube channel, and he's always featuring this certain computer that he uses. So, I don't know, might be something to check out.
Oh, I actually know that guy. He's a big ham radio guy. I think he uses the Panasonic Tough Books.
Okay, so you do know about Gaston. Okay, because I know he always features that one computer that he uses. So, yeah, you already know about it. So, anyway, thought I'd try. WRUJ238 out.
Yes, I do know Gaston. As a matter of fact, I just bought his ATOS 120 HF antenna a couple weeks ago from him. So he's a good guy. And, yeah, the Panasonic Tough Book, to Mike's point, you know, a lot of these laptops don't have a lot of good shielding, but the Tough Book is made more for law enforcement, heavy-duty use, so it probably is a little better shielded, especially around the monitor. When I was in law enforcement several years ago, that's what we had in our cars. So thanks for that, Kelly. Appreciate it, and good to hear from you, and thanks for all your help on all the board stuff. We appreciate it. Any other questions or comments tonight? Don't be shy. We got time for a few more here before the next net starts at 8. Go ahead.
WQRV 903.
QRV 903. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, I'm addressing WRWD623's question about the laptop and interference. I turned on my MacBook. It's a 16-inch MacBook Pro, or whatever they call it. I turned on my RCA radio, my Anytone radio, and my Motorola VX261, and my Kenwood TK3312K2. Absolutely no interference, absolutely no problem with sound coming through onto any of those radios. So it's got to be the radio, because at least in my situation with a MacBook Pro 16-inch, no interference. WQRV 903, back to net.
Thanks, Tim, for going out and unpacking the closet and turning all those on and trying that out. Sounds like you're a little winded from doing all that. That's a lot of work that quick. Appreciate you trying that out.
Yeah, I had to run in and out from the truck to make sure I had all my radios. I tried my Radiodity, but the battery is completely dead. And if I had more time, I would try a VX231. I would try some other radios, but definitely the RCA radio, the Anytone, and the Motorola VX261 and the Kenwood TK3312 are completely immune to any kind of noise from my 16-inch MacBook Pro. So that I would be happy to experiment with more radios, but you know that should be sufficient. WQRV 903, back to net.
Yeah, I would agree, and I don't have any issues either with my Anytone 878, so I do think it's the radio as well. But anyway, that being said, appreciate your efforts there, Tim. Thanks for doing that, and thanks for being out there tonight on the TechNet. Got about 10 minutes before Gary takes over. Any final questions or thoughts before we close things up tonight? Go ahead.
Any comment, Frank?
Yeah, Bubba, go ahead.
Yeah, if these guys are thinking it's the radio, well, maybe change the antenna on the radio. That might do it also. You never know. WRPY 760, back to net control.
Yeah, that's definitely something we could try. he's using just the rubber ducky with this radio. So who knows? But for now, it's just been leaving the radio somewhere else and turn up the volume a little bit. So no big deal. Appreciate the comment there, Bubba. Any other comments or questions here? Got time for maybe a couple more questions. Anybody bought any new radios or new antennas they want to talk about? Anybody need a radio check? We got time for maybe just a few more folks, and then we're going to close her down. Go ahead.
Question.
Heard a question. Can I get your call sign?
USBM783. Name is Jose. My question is, in setting SWR GMRS radio, mobile, 50 water, and all and repeater channels that are there. Got many years experience in doing it on a 40 channel CB, finding channel 20 is a nominal channel and balancing out channel 1 and 40. GMRS is a little trickier.
I don't know if it was my radio or if it was your radio host.
WR GMRS radio. I've got years experience doing it on CB radios, channels 1 through 40, finding channel 20 is your nominal, but GMRS 50 watt with all the channel repeaters is a little trickier, trying to balance everything out.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you're trying to check your SWR, and you're kind of wondering where you should go to do that, correct?
That is correct. There's a big frequency jump with the repeater channel, and so I settled for channel 650 is the middle, and just everything else seemed to balance out.
That's a really good question. I've got an opinion on that, but I'm going to throw it out to the net for other folks to chime in. Anybody have any thoughts about checking SWR on GMRS and where you should do that? Go ahead.
Comment.
760, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Hey, yeah, I'd just get in the middle of the band and set your SWR to the middle of the band, and you go both ways. Just like you said with CB, it's the same way. You set it at 20, and it goes both ways. So at ham, if you go to like 650, 625, set it right in the middle, and you'll be fine. Get a good antenna analyzer, and you should be just great on GMRS. With that, I'll send it back to you, Frank. This is WRPY 760.
Thanks for that. Great idea there, and appreciate your answer. Anybody else with any other opinions? Go ahead.
363.
Steve, I think that was you. Go ahead.
WRCS 363. I'm not sure what kind of analyzer he's using, but I can sweep it, so you can actually put your start frequency and your end frequency, or your center's frequency in your span, and sweep it all. WRCS 363.
I don't know if Jose's using an antenna analyzer or an SWR meter, so I think he's wanting to tune somewhere on his radio and then check the SWR. But yeah, antenna analyzers are definitely nice because you don't have to do it that way, and it makes it a little easier. Anybody else with a comment? Then I'm going to throw one out. 257. A lot of noise in that last one, but I heard a 7. Bill, was that you?
Yeah, WRMR 257. If his radio will let him do it, kind of like what Bubba was saying, you get in the center of the band, there's a 5 megahertz spread between transmit on that thing, you know, 462 and then 467. So if you can get into the 465 portion of the frequency and then balance it from there, if that makes sense, then you can kind of get the high end of the band and the low end of the band and still have a decent SWR. WRMR 257, back to you, Frank.
Bill, thanks for that. That was exactly what I was going to say. I've tuned several antennas for GMRS use, and I typically will tune them for 465 megahertz.
for that exact reason, just as Bill said. You're transmitting on 467, you're receiving on 462, so being right in the middle is usually where I want my SWR to be the best. So that is my 2 cents on that topic. Anybody else with any other comments before we close this question up?
903.
Tim, was that you? Go ahead.
Yeah, use extreme care when doing that, because 465 frequencies are all commercial two-way radio frequencies. So transmitting on those, even for testing, number one, you're going to be outside the GMRS band, so which would make it essentially illegal. But for testing purposes, keep your transmissions very short. Do it away from a metropolitan area if possible, because there are a lot of commercial two-way radio customers in the 464 to 466 frequency range. Just an FYI. But it is a good idea, picking 465 and tuning it to there. Also, make sure you have a UHF SWR meter. If you try to use a CB SWR meter on UHF, it won't work. WQRV 903, back to net.
Tim, that's a great point. Yep, that's 465 is not for GMRS use. I've just tuned my antennas there and hooked them up to an antenna analyzer. I actually haven't transmitted there, but yeah, use extreme care if you're trying to tune an antenna. So, Jose, you got a couple ideas out there. Does that kind of answer your question, 783?
Yes, sir. Great job. And that answers my question. Was kind of on the right track with using common sense and dividing things up and going back and forth. Deciding not to trim anything anymore on the whip, because I was about as low as I can get it to make everybody happy.
Very good. Well, you're sounding good. I don't know what's going on with your radio, but it is still cutting out. Your signal is very strong into the repeater, and your audio is great, but I'm not sure if it's your microphone or if you got a loose connection, but you might want to check that.
Copy that. I will double check to make sure that my microphone is plugged into the jack of the radio correctly. Thanks again for all the responses, and this is WSBM 783, clear.
Okay, thanks, Jose. Appreciate the question. It was a really good question, and a lot of people have that same question, so appreciate you throwing it out there. It's 7:58. We got time for one more question or comment, and then we're going to hand it over to Gary. Last call. Go ahead.
903 comment.
Tim, was that you? 903, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Jose has got his radio on wideband, and I think he's knocking himself out of the filter on the receiver of the repeater, because it seems to be cutting off the CTCSS or DCS when he hits audio peaks. So I think putting his radio on narrowband on the 462-550 would probably solve the problem. WQRV, and that's just by conjecture, but that's what it sounds like to me. WQRV 903, back to net.
Yeah, it did sound like when his audio was, or maybe the microphone was closer to his mouth, or he was talking louder, that's when it was cutting out. And his last transmission, final transmission, he was a little quieter, and it didn't happen until the very end. So that makes sense, Tim. Thanks for that. Well, with that, I'm going to wrap things up unless anybody else has any closing remarks. I'm going to go ahead and shut her down. Last chance.
Comment?
Bubba, was that you? Go ahead.
Yeah, Frank, I just wanted to thank you for running the net. You did a good job, and hope to hear you out there again. WRPY 760. I'll be on the side.
I appreciate that very much, sir, and thank you for all your answers. It's always great to hear you out here. You're a wealth of knowledge. This is Frank, WRVG 584. I'd like to thank everyone who checked in and participated in tonight's net, and we hope to hear you all back here next month. Again, we will not have a net next week, fifth week of the month. Special thanks goes out to WPRR 517 for hosting the Phoenix High Power 550, as well as Scottsdale 700. This is Frank, WRVG 584 for the GMRS 1900 TechNet. And we're not going to return the repeater to its normal operation. We're going to turn things over to WQUZ 645. Gary, go ahead.
Well, good evening. This is WQZ 645, and I'll be your net control for the Arizona Emergency Services Group net. This net is normally conducted after the Tuesday night 1900 net concludes. The Arizona Emergency Services Group, or AESG, is part of the Arizona GMRS Repeater Club. The volunteers in our group are a team of licensed GMRS. The purpose of this net is to perform a regular test of communications equipment, provide training in emergency procedures, and exchange information related to preparedness. All nets, whether for training, exercises, events, or incidents, are directed nets. Now, if you're interested in joining our group, just send us an email, ESG@AZGMRS.org. Any station may break in at any time with emergency or priority traffic during the net. Is there any such traffic at this time? If not, let's go ahead and get started. Those who have already checked in online don't have to check in over the air. Any station that has not checked in online can check in now. Please check into the net with your name and call sign, one station at a time.
WSAK 802, Matt, Phoenix.
Okay, 802, we got you checked in. Any other station?
W858, Dwayne.
Okay, got a Dwayne in there, and you were breaking up a little bit. Can you try your call sign again?
Yeah, WRZP858.
Okay, 858, we got you checked in. Any other station?
WSAT 756, Rick in Youngtown.
Okay, 756, we got you checked in. Any other station?
Good evening, Net Control. This is WRVD 274, Cynthia.
Okay, so we've got you checked in there, 274. Any other station? Okay, very good. Well, let's talk a little bit about the email we sent out to our AESG members today, and we did talk about the topic tonight, which is going to be this is part of our series about getting ready and being prepared for the monsoon season and everything that involves. Tonight we're going to be talking about flash flooding, and also in the email we talked about the fact that the National Weather Service has added some more training dates to their Skywarn weather spotter training classes, and we had a link to that in the email. So take a look at that and make sure that you're up to date with your training on Skywarn there. And if you haven't had that training, they make it real easy now. You just have to do your training online and you're all set. even do have a couple of in-person training sessions as well that are available, so you can try that. This is WQZ 645 Net Control, and tonight we're going to be talking about flash flooding, and it is really one of the more deadly and very serious effects of the monsoon that we do have. And there have been some cases, of course, when it's happened outside of the monsoon season as well.
Comment.
Go ahead, comment.
WSAK 802. Hey, Gary, I do not have said email.
Okay, well, I will have to check on that and see why that didn't get sent out, and we'll let you know.
Awesome, thank you. WSAK 802, back to Net Control.
Okay, well, let's see if I can get my computer to cooperate today. It is giving me problems today. I don't know what the deal is, but we will have to see if we can get it going here. And we've had many serious situations involving flash flooding in Arizona over the years. We're going to be looking at some of those to kind of get us started tonight, and we'll be talking about a couple in particular, and one what is the deadliest storm that ever hit Arizona back in 1970. We'll be talking about that here in just a second. But I do have one question for the net I'm going to throw out there. What is the problem with flash flooding that tends to be the cause of more fatalities and more serious problems that is unique to flash flooding more so than anything else that is weather-related in Arizona? I'm going to throw it out there and see if somebody can come up with that. Any ideas?
903. 802.
Okay, we got 903 first. Go ahead, Tim.
How about washes? People coming up to a wash that's normally dry, it's got a little bit of water in it, or they think, and they proceed to drive through, and they find out that they're going to be dead in about 15, 20 minutes after they get washed downstream.
Okay, very good. That is something that can happen. It's a normally dry, it can be a normally dry wash or creek or something like that, and all of a sudden something happens very quickly. Thanks for that, 903. 802, go ahead.
I was going to follow along those lines. Let me turn down this other radio. Hang on. I was going to follow along those lines. A lot of things I've seen in the past is you'll be off-roading up in the mountains or whatnot, you know, playing around on your side-by-sides and whatnot, and not know that there's a giant storm 2 ridges over. There's no announcement. Another thing I have come across, you know, living outside of the state of Arizona, is I have been rock hounding in the past and heard sirens going off in the past. Well, when you have a dam that releases water, they're supposed to announce that by a siren going off for 3 to 5 minutes. Up in northern Oregon, we had an incident one time while we were rock hounding where they didn't sound the siren and they just let the water go.
Don't know what's going to happen necessarily, and it happens very quickly. That's why they call it flash flooding. And that's another subject, and that is the fact that another factor, I should say, about flash flooding, and that is it can happen where you don't really see a storm. The storm could be miles away. It's dropping all that water, and then all of a sudden a ton or a wall of water just coming down a creek or a marsh or something like that, and it is just there. And that's one of the main problems with flash flooding, and getting warning out is essential, and that is why the AESG will send out our attention tone whenever the Weather Service issued a flash flood warning for that reason. Just so we have one more method of sending that warning bulletin out there. This is WQZ 645 Net Control. Like we've already heard tonight with flash flooding with you.
347.
Okay, I think that was 347. Go ahead.
Yeah, Gary. Fires, burned out areas are very common for quick flash flooding. Several years ago, when the KP complex, right after a burned area, we had a flash flood that took a young girl's life. So, if you're anywhere near a hillside and it's been burned out, expect a flash flooding. You don't even need extreme heavy rains. Just a steady rainfall will cause a flash flooding on a hillside. WRWP 347.
Okay, and you're absolutely right. When there is a burned out area, that can result in flash flooding in that particular area. And we have seen flash flooding even in the city, like up in Flagstaff a couple of years ago. We saw some video of flash flooding that was literally just bringing a... Any other comments or actual experiences that you've had? Yeah, go ahead, Cynthia.
Oh, many moons, like 40 years ago, I worked for land management and wildlife out in the Arizona desert, and there was a family standing on the edge of a flash flood, just watching everything go down, and people were trying to get them to go back, and they weren't really listening. So there's a lot of people who don't understand how dangerous it is.
Okay, that's a very good comment there, Cynthia. We'll let you go ahead and put out your call sign there.
WRBD 274.
Yeah, that is a very good comment right there, and I think that that has to do with education. I mean, there needs to be more education about just how serious these can be, and let's get started here. And that's what we were mentioning, and one of the experiences we just heard just a couple minutes ago about how flash floods can sneak up on people before they're even aware of the situation. And look at a couple of different situations that did happen in the history of Arizona. In September 4th and 5th, it became known as the Labor Day storm of 1970, the deadliest storm in Arizona history. There were 23 deaths in central Arizona. The flash flooding on Tano Creek, they were there. And then on July 15th, of course, 2017, north of Payson, an entire family was having fun playing in the water there of Ellison Creek around the Water Wheel Falls area. Unexpectedly, a flash flood engulfed the area and killed 10 members of that family. And that, of course, was very serious situation there that showed just how serious one flash flood can be and the lives that it can take. Those are just a couple of examples there. There are several more, including several more down in Tucson that have happened as well. Now let's go over just a couple of things just as a reminder about checking the preparedness for flash flooding and being aware. We've talked about this already tonight. And one of the most important things is if an individual or group is out in a area where flash flooding is possible, be aware of the area that you're in. Are you in a low area or a creek or a dry marsh or something like that? The people need to be aware of that. And be aware of the weather forecast. Are thunderstorms expected that day? Where are they expected? And how do you, what roads and escape routes are there out of the area that that particular family or group is in? Those are important things to be aware of. And try to monitor any kind of frequencies or stations that may put out a broadcast about any kind of flash flooding. Keep that on the air there and listen to that. And just be generally aware of the weather signs in your area. And keep in mind that there's a general fact that about half of the deaths in flash flooding happen to people who are in what? People who are in what? Let me throw that out to the net.
729.
Go ahead, 729.
Cars and trucks.
And that is absolutely right. So half of all deaths in flash flooding happen to people who are in vehicles, and they decide, well, they take a look at that and they think, yeah, I can make that. I can get across that little bit of water there, and it turns out that it's much more than they expected, and things change very, very quickly. And another thing that's important is people need to really pay attention to those road closure signs. So when they say road flooded or road closed, just heed those signs. It's just not worth it going across and possibly not only ruining your vehicle, because that has happened many, many times. It doesn't take much. You get that car or truck under that water and get some silty water in that tailpipe and up through there, and you can have a total engine from that. So it doesn't take much, but that can happen, and that's even if people get out of the vehicle are able to escape the water. And if not, then you have a whole other situation there. So that is why that the ASG, the duty officer, if they are aware of a flash flood warning, then we will send out a bulletin on the radio to let people know and advise them about that flash flood bulletin that has gone out from the Weather Service. And Wickenburg has had its share of flash flooding up there. And we did have one of our, several years ago, one of our storm spotters called in a flash flood that was going on up in the Wickenburg area that was relayed by us to the National Weather Service, and they did issue a flash flood warning bulletin from that information. So that system does work. So keep that in mind when we do have a weather bulletin go out, and we're ready to receive reports on weather situations, and our trained Skywarn people are on the air we do have a certain set of criteria, and when that we do want reported, and that information will be put out as part of that bulletin when we start receiving reports from the weather spotters out there. But any kind of flooding is certainly something that we do want to hear about, though, and we can always relay that to the National Weather Service, because sometimes we want to get those reports in to the National Weather Service because those actual reports cause the National Weather Service to issue a warning. So that means the information may be gathered and sent in to the National Weather Service before they have issued one of those warnings. And that means that we don't have to wait until one of those warnings are sent out to start gathering information and sending in reports to Net Control that realize it then to the National Weather Service. This is WQZ 645 Net Control. Any other questions or comments about flash flooding here in Arizona? Okay, any questions or comments about how our activations work, how they're set up, what Net Control operators do to get things going? Do they use a script? Well, yes, they do. And that kind of helps out the Net Control operators get things started there. Any other questions or comments about the topic tonight? Okay, very good. Well, we pretty much covered what we did want to cover tonight, and if you have any questions, of course, you can email ESG@AZGMRS.org, and we'll get an answer for you. Before we close it up tonight, any other comments or questions about any subject tonight? Okay, very good. Well, good to everybody out there, and I appreciate everybody that checked into the net tonight. This is WQZ 645 Net Control, and I'm going to return the repeater back to normal operations.
Six 45802. Six 45802.